Powered by Riverside.
Hello and welcome everyone, Anchor.fm. It is the 4th and 1 podcast. As always, we are the worstest podcast on the interwebs. Welcome to week 6 of college football. Can't believe we are already halfway done with the season. It is a bittersweet moment for me because we are halfway done through the season now. Last week, week 5 was excellent. My main man, he is back with us after a week hiatus, and by the way he sounds today, maybe he should have taken another week. Feeling a little bit ill, but he is powering through for the worstest podcast on the interwebs. I am your host, Mekhi Schlicker, along with my main man, Simeon. How are we doing? How are we feeling?
Well, I was down, my blood oxygen level was down to 95 about half hour ago, so that was cool. Yeah, I had to work from home today and have a boss who's upset that I have to work from home today. So we're doing about as well as can be expected.
Excellent. Well, you know, for a Tuesday, we're filming it a little early.
I'm in danger.
So, yeah, but we got a great slate of games for you for week 6 here. We got some intriguing games. However, last week, week 5, it was all intriguing, man. Every single game I turned on, it was almost every single game was excellent. So yeah, let's just jump right into the check down here.
Sorry, I was pulling up the standings. I wasn't expecting you to do that. Where's my whistle? That is so sad. Okay, there it goes.
So the Ravens did something on Sunday that got everyone talking. The Ravens tie a 44-year-old record as they rushed for 100 yards in 43 straight games. They did this with 3 seconds left on the clock. They had to do, it was kind of a last snap. They had to use the last snap of the game. Vic Fangio got kind of all upset. Everyone is telling Vic Fangio, who is the Broncos coach, to get over himself. But I thought it was pretty cool that the Ravens have found their identity so much for where they have rushed for 100 yards in 43 consecutive games. They go for 44 this week, and I don't see why they can't even get it. Meanwhile, you should note that the Ravens don't have any of their 3 top running backs this year, as they are either hurt with knee or ankle issues this year.
It's actually kind of impressive with the fact that they're all injured. But
yeah, it just shows you the power of Lamar Jackson and the scheme. They got a good scheme there in Baltimore. Clemson, for the first time since 2014, is out of the AP poll top 25. It marks a big era, and it gives college football kind of an eerie feel, but it also kind of gives it an excitement because now of 2 surefire spots gone in the college football playoff to Alabama and Clemson, there's probably only 1 spot gone, and that would be to the SEC champion. Now, at this point, they might be 2. Both Georgia and Alabama might both get in, as they are the top teams, but I think that this kind of marks a new era of college football. We'll have to see if they can rebound. They had a hard-fought win against Boston College at home. Boston College was a solid team. However, Clemson's a lot better, so who knows where Clemson goes from here, but their struggles continue. They did end up winning the game barely on a fumble late in the game. And Tom Brady, finally, has defeated all 32 NFL teams. He went up to Foxborough in New England, returned home where he spent 20 NFL seasons, won 6 Super Bowl titles with his coach Bill Belichick. In his return, they won as the Patriots missed a last-second field goal that would have given them the lead and the win in Foxborough on Brady's return. But he went up there. The Buccaneers got the win over the Patriots. However, Mac Jones probably stole the show, looks very good, threw for 280 yards, a couple touchdowns, and only 1 interception. So Patriots have some things to look forward to, but it was kind of weird to see Tom Brady playing against the Patriots.
Well, and he broke the Drew Brees' all-time passing yardage record,
yes,
right?
Yes, that he did. Thank you. I did forget that. He did set the new NFL record for most passing yards in a career with 80,000 and change. So that definitely probably should have been more of the note, but, that was very early on in the game, and then everyone kind of forgot about that and just kind of focused on the game. However, last week, it was a great week to watch college football, in all honesty with you. Lots of things happened. The two games that everyone thought would be exciting really were not, between Georgia and Arkansas and Ole Miss and Alabama. Arkansas it's almost like the stage was too big for them when they went to Georgia and they played in between the hedges. Arkansas had 13 penalties for 101 yards, which means right off the bat they just shot themselves in the foot. Their very first two snaps of the game, well, even before they took a single snap of the game, they had two false start penalties. Georgia dominated them to a 34-0 rout. Georgia has allowed 26 points all year. They are a dominant defense, probably the best in college football. And then when you flip it to the other side, Alabama and Ole Miss, this was slated to be a track meet, up and down, points all over the place, and really it was not. It was 35-0 Alabama at halftime. They would go on to win 42-21, which means they hit the under. So there's that. But Ole Miss didn't cover the 14.5, and really Alabama kind of flexed its muscle. Now, both for Georgia and Alabama, both of these games were at home, but they clearly have set themselves apart and showed the entire college football world that they are the two best teams in college football. And Georgia, I think, has a legitimate case to be number one. And I'm going to get to this in a second, but I actually have them ranked number one in my top 10 this week.
What, frick, I just had it. Oh, for those of you who follow us, excuse me, and excuse my voice again for this week, on Instagram at 4th and 1 podcast, Makai, what was your ended up record for calls for the week?
I was over 500 again. I went 4-3 because the lock of the week hit.
Got it.
So I made two bets. On the Ole Miss Alabama game, I said take Ole Miss plus the 14.5, but take the under. Ole Miss lost by 21, so that one didn't hit, but the under hit. So,
well, alrighty.
Yeah. So my lock of the week, I'm 1-0. Meanwhile, you did not make one last week, but you are a good 0-5.
No,
1-4.
1-5.
Oh, 1-5.
1-8, I actually think, technically.
Oh, well, we all can't be winners. You're still trying to get the hang of it. Do you have a lock? Do you have a lock of the week for us this week, or no?
I think I'm going to go a little bit different this week.
Okay.
So yes, but
okay,
it's going to be different.
Got a lock.
But I do.
Well,
yeah.
I had so much fun with it that I'm actually going to jump in on a lock of the week this week.
Okay.
And it's mucho interesto, if you know what I'm saying. It's
mucho interesante?
Sure, yeah. So for all the listeners, stick around or just fast forward to the end of the podcast to get the lock of the week. Anyway, back to week 5. Michigan, well, they kind of made a statement, at least I think defensively and their passing game. Michigan played an elite defense in Wisconsin on Saturday. They only ran the ball for 100 yards, but they ran it 44 times. The commitment to the running game when things weren't going well really stuck out to me. Michigan's passing game was, what's the best way to put this?
Actually existed?
Well, yeah, it existed, but it was selective explosive. So they chose their deep shots wisely, and they hit them. It is clear to me that J.J. McCarthy at some point will probably take Cade McNamara's job. If not this season, then next he will definitely take it and probably start this season. He is the more talented quarterback. He's more athletic. They kind of used him on a few read options there in the second half, and he threw this beautiful deep ball to Dalen Baldwin for a touchdown. But as they said in the broadcast, Cade McNamara literally has done nothing wrong. The top three Michigan quarterbacks still do not have a turnover. Now, Michigan does have a one turnover because Alec Bowman, the fourth string quarterback, came in and threw an interception with like a minute and a half to go in the game, which no one is counting as an actual turnover for Michigan. So I'm still counting that Michigan has 0 turnovers on the year.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, and so Cade McNamara hasn't turned the ball over. He is efficient. Michigan scores on like 60% of the drives that he orchestrates. So you can't really take him out because he's kind of earned that spot. But clearly, J.J. McCarthy is the future of the Michigan Wolverine program. Then I flipped over, when that game ended, I flipped over to the NBC game, which was Notre Dame and Cincinnati. Notre Dame was not ready for the physicalness of Cincinnati. Now, Notre Dame, I think, is a little overhyped this year. Along the offensive line, they are not as big and tough as previous years, and Cincinnati kind of really took it to them. Desmond Ridder still is too inconsistent for my liking. I have here that congratulations, Cincinnati. Now you got to win out. You got to win the American. And you have to look good doing it because most of the American is straight garbage this year. But even if you do make the college football playoff, enjoy getting absolutely railroaded by either Georgia or Alabama, whoever you face, because really no one, but especially you just don't have enough weapons to compete with the Alabamas and the Georgias of the world. But you're a fun little story. Also, Notre Dame, shame on me. I picked you, I didn't pick you, and then you blew out Wisconsin, and then I picked you, and you really let me down. I was really feeling good about it, but you really let me down. Your lack of running game, considering we preach that the running game is so important, you really let me down, and I was very, very disappointed in that.
I'm not going to lie, I was surprised you picked them. With just kind of, for an American team to look as dominant as Cincinnati has looked this year, going into places. Well, I want to say dominant. Not Nebraska. Alabama has looked dominant this year. Cincinnati has looked complete for a smaller school this year. So I'm surprised you picked them, to be honest, with how incomplete Notre Dame looked.
I just thought that the Wisconsin win kind of gave them a boost. It was at home, which really doesn't mean much to Notre Dame, as it's not really a home field advantage. I just felt like Notre Dame was going to be like, it's not Chip Kelly, Brian Kelly's old team. That's where he came from. So there was a lot of factors where I'm just like, I just think that they'll just get up for Cincinnati. I think that they did. They tried to get up from Cincinnati. Cincinnati just kept punching them in the mouth every time they got up. So we'll see here. I don't think Cincinnati's as good as everyone else seems to think that they are. I just think that Indiana's not very good this year. They turned the ball over bunches, and they were losing that game before they really turned it on. And the Indiana middle linebacker got kicked out for targeting. Notre Dame, had him at one point, kind of went on little runs, but they haven't looked impressive. So the next key game from Cincinnati, unless if other things change, is they play SMU later in this season. And SMU has a real offense, so that should be an exciting game.
That's the second to last game in the conference.
Right, so SMU's kind of got to be ranked still at that time, because that's the only game that you can lose closely. The College Football Playoff Committee will penalize Cincinnati if they win games, but only win them by 8 or less points.
Sorry.
No, you're absolutely good. You keep sneezing away in there, my man. Oklahoma, against Kansas State. Again, this was one of my games to watch for last week for you viewers. Oklahoma finally ran the football, a little over 100 yards. Wasn't anything impressive, but they averaged 4.5 yards on the ground, or per carry, I should say, which that's a decent chunk of change. Spencer Rattler, again, if most of your offense is usually predicated on the running game and you take that away, the passing game isn't going to be there. I thought Oklahoma really found something. Lincoln Riley found something with the two-back set. He used to use the two-back set where he would use two running backs or fullback and a running back. He used to use that a lot in Baker Mayfield's offense, and I thought they found a lot of success late in that game. However, Oklahoma now goes and plays Texas this week, as I'll get to in a minute, and Texas can put up points, and Oklahoma's defense isn't looking as stout as the experts thought that it might early in the season, or as they were supposed to, although I'm not sure why they're surprised, because it's Oklahoma, and Oklahoma never really has ever played defense, at least in recent memory. But the Big 12 is shaping up very intriguing. You have Oklahoma State, Texas, and Oklahoma, plus some other teams that are all undefeated in conference. Again, top two go to the conference championship. So my pick is still wide open for the Big 12 Conference Championship of Oklahoma State. By the way, Oklahoma State plays real defense. They held a Baylor team that likes to run the ball for over 300 yards a game to 79 yards rushing. Now, they're not explosive offensively, Oklahoma State, but they're explosive enough. They kind of found a little something, but they beat Baylor by 7, even committing 3 turnovers and being out time of possession. Now, they weren't outgained, but they were out time of possession. So, Simeon, I think that the Big 12 is shaping up very intriguing. However, I'm afraid that they're just going to, because they play a round robin, everyone plays themselves, I'm afraid that they're just going to cannibalize themselves.
Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
And they're going to leave the Big 12 out again of the college football playoff.
Here's the thing, okay? You're not at all wrong, because only 3 teams are currently undefeated in conference. Now, those are also happen to be... Sorry, where did it go? The only 2 of those are undefeated in total, compared to, like, when you look at the Big Ten, shall we say, where Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, and Iowa are all undefeated straight up. But you do have Baylor, Texas Tech, and Texas with only one losses overall, so they look strong. But I think you bring it to a good point from the fact that they will cannibalize themselves. They're going to have to, right? Texas and Oklahoma and Oklahoma State have to play each other at some time, which is good from the perspective of if Oklahoma State wins, all of a sudden Mike Gundy goes from, okay, he should probably leave, to, all right, we can give him another couple years. If you told me Oklahoma State was going to be 5-0 and undefeated in conference and ranked 12th by week 5, I would have called you crazy. I would have been, nope, they're on a downward spiral. They're not going to go there. Mike Gundy's going to be out after this year. And here we are again. But, you know, you bring up a very valid point where what happens if they all go one loss and they're the committee's not putting them in. They'd rather put in a one-loss Iowa or Ohio State team this year.
Yeah, 100% absolutely. But these next 2 weeks, so we got Oklahoma, Texas this week.
Right.
And then the winner of that, well, not the winner of that, then Texas go host Oklahoma State next week. So very quickly, we're going to figure out who's who and who's in the driver's seat. Now, if Oklahoma kind of gets through Texas here, then it really sets up to be Oklahoma and Oklahoma State.
This is
but Texas's one loss is out of conference. Remember that, so they're unbeaten. And Oklahoma plays defense. Texas plays offense, but no defense. And Oklahoma's still in between.
You brought this up earlier this year, and this is something that I've kind of been peddling as I've watched the year develop. The problem that the Big 12 is going to run into is, in order for, let's say, Oklahoma State, just for kicks and giggles. Oklahoma's not making it out of the Big 10 in the Big 12, in my opinion. Spencer Rattler's looked too shook. He hasn't looked consistent. Their offense hasn't looked consistent. You already mentioned they don't have any defense, so when your offense isn't consistent, especially coming from a powerhouse offense type, you're not going to make it out of the Big 12. When you're seeing Texas get more efficient, you're seeing Oklahoma State, even Baylor be more efficient, be more consistent with their offense. This is something that you've brought up earlier this year that now I'm starting to see is, especially in the AP, because Iowa went from, 6-3 this week? Is what I'm remembering correct? If I'm remembering,
yeah,
let me make sure. Yeah, they're up two spots in both the AP and in the coaches poll. They went from that one means they went from 5 to 6. They were losing after halfway through the second quarter, 14-0 to who'd they play this week?
Well, it was last week, but it was Colorado
last
State.
week. Sorry.
So for why some of these big jump, like Michigan jumped 5 spots from 14 to 9. What aided that was 4 top 10 teams lost. Now that's a little misleading because 2 of those top 10 teams that lost were playing other top 10 teams. So Arkansas was playing Georgia,
yeah,
and
Ole Miss was playing Alabama.
Well, no, because Ole Miss wasn't
they were ranked 12th.
a top 10 team.
Yeah.
It was Cincinnati and Notre Dame.
Yeah, sorry, my bad.
Right, so, but then Florida, I think, was 10 or 11. Anyway, they lost to Kentucky.
Right.
Oregon lost as well, and then I don't know who the other top 10 team. I think Florida was at 10.
Yeah. Sorry, this is what I should say. The AP and the college committee really like it when you blow out teams, because that's what they lost. Sorry, it was last week, 2 weeks ago technically. Iowa State was down for the first little bit, and then Iowa, not Iowa State, was down to Colorado State for a little bit. They came back, they won the game, 34-14 sort of deal. I don't know if that was the actual score. But then this week, they came around and they trounced them. They blew them out like Georgia blew out Arkansas.
I'm sorry, I stepped away to turn on the light,
you're good.
Obviously. You're talking about Iowa.
I'm saying how this is something that you've said, and this is something that the Big 12 is going to need to do, and I'm using Iowa as an example for the fact that they went up 2 spots, is you need to destroy teams.
Oh, right. Wait, when it comes to the end of the season and kind of nitpick, and when it comes down to the kind of the last couple of weeks in terms of positioning,
right,
100%.
And so when Oklahoma State runs up against these teams, or if Texas runs up against these teams, they can't be winning by 7, unless it's in triple overtime, because we love those games. Right. But unless it's in triple overtime, you have to be beating teams by 21, by 34, by large sums.
And it's hard because the defensive coordinators held that national convention and they kind of all gave themselves a pep talk and they kind of upped the standard. So I think that this year's a little different because there is so much defense being played that I think just across the board naturally, there's going to be a lot of close games, and the top teams, unless if you're Alabama and Georgia, aren't going to be blowing out their competition.
Right.
Like Iowa's not sexy at all, but their defense is very good.
Right.
They had 7 turnovers, 5 interceptions against Talia Tagovailoa. They got my weekend started off great because the Iowa hit. Their defense is dominant, but their offense isn't anything sexy. And Kirk Herbstreit mentions this very well, that they kind of play into how their defense is playing. So when their defense is this good, you just ball control. You run the ball. You do a few play action. Nothing is going to be explosive, but it's just going to be, you're going to take care of the football, you're going to get 3-yard runs, you're going to punt, you're going to play field position. So Iowa, I think, coming down the stretch, even if they win this week against Penn State, and we'll get to this and we'll get to that game later on in the show, but Iowa might not look and blow teams out down the road. If I was sitting there at 3 this week, if they beat Penn State, but then next week, or if they have a bye week next week, or whenever, they only beat this team by 7 or 10, they might go from 3 to 4, because whoever is the 4th ranked team there,
right,
at the time might blow their squad out, but that's not the game Iowa plays. Iowa just plays to beat. They literally, all they care about is winning the game. They really don't care about how it looks. So to your point, yes, absolutely, it matters to the selection committee how you look in your wins, which I never really 100% agreed with. I did in the fact when you were nitpicking dominant offensive performances.
Right.
Then you got to nitpick. But now they kind of got to back it down to be like, these defensive coordinators all got this pep talk from some guy at their national convention there. And so now we're all playing defense, and so we got to kind of adjust our standards. And I thought that was very interesting.
You bring up Iowa. This is Iowa's problem, is they... Let's jump into Iowa-Penn State, because I think, personally, that's the most interesting game, because that's the biggest game to come out of the Big Ten in a couple years, because that's a 3v4. I think the AP specifically put Iowa up there in 3 spots, so it could be a 3v4. It's 2 strong defensive teams, and Iowa has to show up here because they only have the rest of the West. They're playing Penn State's their second East, and then they're going into an extremely weak West division to play the rest of the West with not a single ranked opponent or an opponent who will be ranked.
The rest of the way.
The rest of the way.
Right. You're 100% correct. Before I really jump into that game, I just want to round this out. This is a segment just for this week I would like to say, let me introduce you to a foot surgeon. And these are for the teams that really just found their daddy's handgun in the bedside table, took it out,
wasn't sure where you were going there with that one.
Shot themselves in the foot with it. And they not only shot themselves in the foot with it once, then while on their way to call 911, they pointed the gun at the other foot and shot themselves in the other foot. So basically, I have Oregon. Okay, first and foremost, I have 3 teams on this list. Oregon, you turned the ball over against the Stanford team, who, again, was physical, but that's fine. It's 1 turnover. The bigger problem I'm having is the 10 penalties for 99 yards. Not only that, it was 2nd and 19 with 1:30 left in the game. Stanford's down 7. You then rough the passer and targeting. Your best player gets targeting on that play, which kicks him out of the game. Then 2 plays later, you get it's going to be 4th and 10, and your other defensive end roughs the passer, which keeps the drive alive. So that's 2 straight times there the drive is kept alive. And then on 3rd and goal at the end of the game, you get a defensive holding call in the end zone, which gives Stanford 1 untimed down, which means that they, of course, get the touchdown, tie the game, go into overtime, and beat Oregon. So congratulations, Oregon. Let me introduce you to a foot surgeon. Florida, let me introduce you to a multiple foot surgeons, because I don't think there's anything left below your kneecaps, in all honesty.
In very Florida fashion, the state of Florida fashion.
In very Florida fashion. Kentucky has not beaten Florida in Kentucky, okay, since 1986. Florida then turns the ball over once and has 15 penalties for 115 yards. It was false start after false start after false start after holding after false start. And on their drive down to try to tie the game, it was They were on like the 5, false start. Then it was holding. Then they never gave themselves a chance. And for a team that loves to run the football like Florida, they're one of the best running teams in the entire country. You can't have 15 penalties for 115 yards. And they weren't even, most of them were false starts on the offensive line. And it must have been infuriating for all the fans there in Gainesville. However, let's flip this over. Kentucky played a heck of a game. However, they should not have beaten Florida. Florida was the better team. But Kentucky, 5-0, ranked. Big matchup this weekend against LSU. I thoroughly expect them to lay whatever that point spread is. It's you bet LSU plus whatever, because that's what it's going to be. And finally, let me introduce you to a foot surgeon, is Arkansas or Arkansas. Arkansas, you go into Georgia. Before you even snap the ball, you have 2 penalties, 2 false starts, and you have 13 penalties for 101 yards. That's the length of a football field. And against a defense, a Georgia defense, that you have to stay on schedule, which means, we'll bring this segment back. What does that mean, Micaiah? Well, Mom, that means, what did I say? I said, I'm Alpha. I lost my train of thought. Oh, my goodness.
You have to play against your schedule?
Oh, you have to stay ahead of schedule. What does playing ahead of schedule mean, Micaiah? Well, playing ahead of schedule, Mom, means that you just have to, assuming you can gain 3 yards via any running play, you basically just have to stay above the change, which means no negative plays. Stay on schedule for first downs. And they did not do that. Thank you, Micaiah. You're welcome, Mother. There we go. We saved a text message.
Yeah.
So that was the new segment called, let me introduce you to a foot surgeon. I won't do it every week, but I was just looking through it, and Oregon, it was just terrible. And then Florida, I'm just watching this game. I'm like, how does this keep happening? So anyway, let's get into these ranked matchups and the 5 biggest games going on this weekend. We kind of touched on Penn State and Iowa, so let's just start right there as we were. So number 4, Penn State going to number 3, Iowa. They're in Iowa City at Kinnick Stadium there. Penn State is the underdog. They're getting 2 points, which means this is basically just a pick-em game and it's home field advantage. That's how that works. So what Iowa's specialty is getting turnovers. Their front 7 is good enough, but it's their back. It's the secondary that really stands out. Anytime that anyone throws the football on Iowa, you think that maybe it's going for an interception. Iowa's going to make Penn State methodically march down the field, not make any mistakes, and get touchdowns. Or probably field goals. The over-under is 40.5. Well, what do you feel about that over-under, 40.5?
Yeah. This was actually going to be my lock of the week because I saw that. I was one of them. I'm going to make a call in the lock of the week. Take the under.
Okay. All right.
That's high. I think this is going to be a 35 type of point game. Even maybe, 10 to, think week 1 against Wisconsin.
Okay.
A 25, 30 point game at most.
So Penn State's tough because Penn State they'll be bogged down. It'll be 2-yard game, 2-yard game, 2-yard game, punt, and they'll do that for like 4 straight possessions. And then all of a sudden they'll hit you with this big play where Jahan Dotson, their wide receiver, is running wide open in the middle of the field, exactly like Wisconsin.
Right.
In the game against Wisconsin, Penn State on 4 plays had 200 yards. The rest of the game they had 98. So I 100% get your point. Iowa, to me, though, because Penn State's defense is no joke, Iowa's going to have to hit an explosive play or two because Penn State, no one on Iowa's skill positions at wide receiver, running back scares Penn State's defensive coordinator. Or if they do, then they really shouldn't. They are talented, yes, do not get me wrong, but Penn State's front is good enough to stop Iowa's running game. So can Michael Petrus, the quarterback, get a 20 or 30 yard pass play a couple times in this game to set up great field position, flip the field, get field goals, or position themselves to get touchdowns. Again, Iowa is not sexy at all. Their offensive game plan is not sexy. Their defensive game plan is not sexy. They are going to live with these 5-yard little in routes and let Penn State kind of methodically do their thing down the field, and they're going to bet that when they get to the red zone, they're not going to be able to score a touchdown, or even if they get to the red zone. These games are always close. Penn State, historically, of late, has been dominant in this series. They pretty much beat Iowa every time. Now, they don't rout them, but even when it's in Iowa City, the one game, Trace McSorley threw a walk-off touchdown. This is a very close game. However, because it is at home, I do like Iowa. Penn State, this really should be called the Schlicker Boys Bowl, because you think Iowa's the best team in the Big Ten, and I think Penn State is the best team in the Big Ten.
We're both sleeping on Michigan State, too.
Oh, well, we are both sleeping on Michigan State. Also, and Ohio State, did you see what they did to Rutgers this past weekend?
No, I didn't.
52-13.
Poor Rutgers, dude. They have Michigan State, who's looking to make a point this week, too.
And again, that Rutgers team held Michigan to 20 points.
Right.
So there is something to be said there. Anyway, Sean Clifford has been playing excellent football. He struggled with turnovers last year. Hasn't really turned the ball over this year. Kind of played poorly in that Wisconsin game on the road. His two biggest games so far this year, Auburn and Indiana, have been at home at night with that crowd, which have kind of helped him out a little bit. I'm going to say take Iowa. Take the money line. Take Iowa -2. Either way, I think it's just about even, whatever you feel better about. But take Iowa here. They're not sexy, but that defense is legit, and it's more the secondary for me that is the legit part about them. So take Iowa -2. And I would assume, since you're an Iowa boy this year, you're taking Iowa?
You have two teams that are basically copy-paste. Maybe just like talent level is different. I think Penn State has the better talent level, but I think Iowa's just been playing more consistent football this year than Penn State has. I'm taking Iowa. I'm taking Iowa plus the points, and I'm taking the under. And that's my lock of the week.
All right. So Simeon's lock of the week is under 40.5. So that's got a good chance. That's got a definitely good chance. All right. Let's go to a Friday night game. There is a game on Friday. So when this comes out, this will be tonight's game. We are recording on Tuesday, but this is as it comes out on Friday. So it's Stanford at Arizona State. Why is this a big game? Well, Stanford now has put themselves into a position where if they win out, they're probably going to be in the Pac-12 championship game, barring something. No, they will be, because they will hold the tiebreaker. They only have one loss in conference currently. Arizona State, meanwhile, should be 5-0. They're 4-1, but the one game they lost to BYU, they turned the ball over 4 times. They outgained and out-time of possession BYU, but they turned the ball over 4 times, and that's what you get. Arizona State is very balanced. They run the ball, and they throw the ball for about the same amount of yardage. It's 200 and change. Their defense is very good at stopping the run, and that's what Stanford likes to do. Now, Stanford is pulling a win from the ashes, as we talked about with Oregon shooting themselves in the foot. Stanford was dead and gone, and at one point I turned on the game, and the commentators go, Stanford was dead to rights 2 minutes ago, and then they go on to win in overtime versus Oregon. Tanner McKee, the quarterback, clearly has given them a boost. Their running game still is not great, but Arizona State, this is a big game for Arizona State, because Arizona State, honestly, is the Pac-12's last chance for the college football playoff. Because Arizona State, outside of that one loss to BYU, who BYU is sitting 13 in the polls, so as BYU keeps winning, that loss for Arizona State keeps looking better and better. Arizona State has looked dominant both in their loss and all their wins, and especially last week against a UCLA team that likes to run the football, they kind of shut that shit down. So, the over-under is 51. I'm not touching that. However, what I am touching is it's Arizona State minus 11.5. I think that you absolutely hammer that. Because Stanford, like I said, they're coming off an emotional win. It's on the road. It's going to be at night, Friday night. You know them Arizona Sun Devil fans going to be out there, unlike the Stanford Cardinal fans. You gotta, it's a party college. Everyone's going to be liquored up, coked up, ready to go, screaming. And they got Herm Edwards. So I don't know how, I do see how Stanford can make this game if they slow the ball down, but Arizona State, to me, at least early on, looks like the most complete team in the Pac-12, and they kind of got, with that loss to BYU, kind of people forgot about them, but if you look inside the numbers, Arizona State dominated that game. It's just that they turned the ball over 4 times. So I'm hammering Arizona State minus 11.5. I think they could win by 20. It could be one of those games where it's 10, like start of the fourth quarter,
right,
and then they kind of pull away. But
this is the thing with Pac-12 football. It's what burned me in my picks is the inconsistency of scoring is what throws it off. I feel like Pac-12 football is really game by game. Like SEC football kind of plays out from a script. Pac-12 is just improv. They're going out there and they're playing a game, and if they need to go to air raid, they go to air raid. If they need to go to run and gun, they go to run and gun. If they need to pound the ball down your face with 50 rushes, they're going to do it.
I think some of that kind of plays into the fact that they play so late at night.
Yeah.
People really don't watch and pay attention. Like, I watched the show College Football Final, and it tapes after all the college football games are done. They didn't even wait for the Arizona State UCLA game to be done. It was still in progress when they taped College Football Final, right? So it's like,
right,
even ESPN show doesn't really care about the Pac-12. Now, that is a bigger problem in and of itself, and the Pac-12 does deserve some respect. There we go. I got it. Yep, stroke. But yes, hammer Arizona State. Minus 11.5. I would jump on that. I thought it was 10.5 when I looked yesterday. It was 10.5. Now it's 11.5. So I would jump on this number as low as you can get it, because again, there's some. I think Arizona State wins. It's just by how much. But the lower that number is, the better it is for you.
Hey, here's a random ass game for you on Saturday to watch while Micaiah gets ready for his next one. The University of Texas San Antonio Roadrunners, 5-0. They're playing the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. Western Kentucky has been averaging 520 yards of total offense this year, and I think that might actually be an interesting game if you're interested in watching garbage football.
This is
on Saturday.
UTSA versus Western Kentucky.
Yeah.
UTSA just beat I
literally just closed the tab.
A big-time program. Anyway, I don't know what the over-under is, but they can kind of both put up points.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe take the over?
It's interesting. I'll pull it back up. It's interesting because it's one of those teams that's they'll be ranked like 23rd if they win out. They just beat UNLV. They beat Memphis.
That's who
and
it was.
They beat
it was
Illinois
Memphis.
this year.
Yeah.
They'll be one of those teams that if they win out, they'll finish like 23rd, and everybody will be like, "Where the flip did they come from?" Their coach, if I'm remembering correctly, came from Arkansas. Funny enough, it's Jeff Taylor. He'll probably get a promotion this year. Sorry, Jeff Taylor.
What conference are they in? Are they in Sun Belt?
They are in Conference USA.
Oh, Conference USA. Okay,
he started
so
last year, and he came from Arkansas as the assistant head coach and running back coach.
Got it. All right.
Just an interesting game that I saw.
A game to watch. Absolutely. Keep hitting us up. Those little tidbits you provide, but beyond pushing buttons, are why we keep you around on the worstest podcast on the interwebs.
Well, Dick, here's the deal. I'm the best there is, plain and simple. I mean, I wake up in the morning, I piss excellent.
Number 2, Georgia's going to Auburn in the oldest rivalry in the South. Yes, that is true. I don't really care if you look it up or not, but it is true. Georgia is 14.5 points favorite. They, ironically, were 14.5 point. Well, actually, it was more than that. It closed at 14.5, but they are 14.5. They were 14.5 point favorites last week at Arkansas, or at home to Arkansas. Can Georgia, the problem is still, Georgia plays great defense. They run the ball a lot. They use their tight ends. They got a big offensive line, good running back. Can they figure out the quarterback situation? So Stetson Bennett is a day-to-day thing with a strained lat muscle. JT Daniels is. And then Stetson Bennett, while he's a capable backup, is okay. He comes in, and some days he'll be a world beater, and then other days he'll just not do great. They only attempted 11 passes against Arkansas last week because they were so dominant on defense and their running game was so good. They're going to have to stop Auburn's running game, which, again, they're the best running defense in the nation. Auburn has got to get production from Bo Nix. And Bo Nix is a quarterback, highly touted. His father played at Auburn. He started at Auburn as a true freshman. He's at home, which means he should play better than on the road. But he has to be consistent. And he has to keep the offense ahead of the chains. So really, in this game, you're betting on whether or not Auburn can stay closer than 2 touchdowns. And I'm saying that they can't. This Georgia defense is just very impressive, and Kirby Smart is not going to let them have a down week coming off an emotional win on the road. I think that this is close early. It's a blowout late. Over-under's 46. Are you touching that at all?
From a betting perspective, no, because this could be one of those games that's like...
Right. 35-10.
Yeah, or it could be 23-20 sort of deal, or 15-18, weirdly enough. Throw a safety in there for good measure, it could get weird. So
it could.
Wait, sorry, I had it pulled up here. The spread is 14.5, but that's a large spread, dude.
It is, but again, it was 18.5 against Arkansas. Opened when I did the show last week, it was 18.5. It closed at 14.5 because all of the people kept just hammering that Arkansas plus the points, and so the number kind of dwindled down to 14 or 15 before game time, and then Georgia beat them by 30. Also, Bo Nix very inconsistent, and he makes a lot of Johnny Manziel type plays.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean, he kind of runs around, throws the ball up, and gets lucky. So I just think that's not going to work against Georgia. I'm taking Georgia minus the points. I honestly think that this could get ugly for Auburn. Auburn's coach, Brian Harsin, is going to hear about it. He's the coach from Boise State. There's nothing you got to give him some time with
it's his
the
first
program.
year.
Auburn has kind of been overrated after those first couple weeks where they blew those two teams, where they blew Akron and South Alabama out.
Yep.
And then they went up to Happy Valley and they played well. But if you remember, no one during a whiteout game, those games are always close.
Right.
So, and they have an SEC front seven. So Georgia's defense is on another level. Let
4 points allowed per game. That's what they're averaging right now.
They have allowed 26 total points the whole season. And let me hit you with this knowledge. So the Football Power Index, FPI, has always ranked the team. The gap in between 1 and 2 and the rest of the field has not been this big since USC and Texas in 2005.
Who's 2? Who's after Georgia?
Georgia is Iowa. It drops to Iowa and Penn State.
Dear Lord.
So they're saying that the gap in between Georgia and Iowa, which you can't necessarily disagree with, is as large as it was Texas and Penn State, right. I think because Penn State that year finished number 3.
Dude, that is absolutely ridiculous. It's like, is Kirby Smart still? He's still at Georgia, right?
Yep, you got it.
It's like, I can't out offense Alabama, so I'm going to try to out defense them. It's like that's what he did.
They're basically the more sexy version of Iowa.
Yeah.
It's just you're not going to get much defense.
It's a difference between a brunette and a blonde.
Right, exactly. You're just not. It's Iowa with a whole bunch of 5 stars.
Right.
Georgia is just Iowa with 5-star recruits. Title?
Yes.
Oh, all right, great. So there you go. Georgia, again, but they got to, coming later into the season, as it gets closer to playoff time and things like that, they got to figure out this quarterback position out. But their defense is just uber dominant, and my opinion, the best in football. All right. Number 13, Arkansas, is going to Oxford, Mississippi, to take on 17th-ranked Ole Miss. Ole Miss likes to run the ball. Ole Miss did not run the ball last week against Alabama, 77 yards rushing. Now, a lot of that had to do with the fact Alabama kind of jumped on them early, and then so they kind of had to throw the ball a lot. The over-under 66.5. You like big over-unders. What do you think about that?
I'm taking the over on this one.
Oh, dear Lord.
Here's why. Okay,
that's a huge number.
That's a huge number, and here's the thing: I'm not putting any money on it, so I don't care. I think both of these teams are going to be pissed, and I think who's the quarterback? Who's the quarterback there for Ole Miss?
Matt Corral.
Matt Corral.
His Heisman
went out the window.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Legitimately, it just went right out the window, and I think he wants it back.
Like a turd in the toilet, it was flushed down.
It was flushed down. Thank you, Jalen Hurts. So it's just one of those things that I think you could see this being 45-45 sort of deal, you know. High scoring, going back and forth, blowing punches. It could also be 10-3, you know? But I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be 20-20 sort of deal. I think it's going to be either.
Two of Alabama. So Arkansas is going to be pissed.
Yeah.
Ole Miss. Yes, they will be angry. But 2 of Alabama's touchdowns was because they went for it on 4th down in their own territory. Ole Miss did.
Yeah.
And so they kind of, because they had to, because it was 14-0 at that point, 21-0 at that point.
Right.
And so 2 of the touchdowns were kind of, Alabama didn't have to do anything. They basically got the ball and then like 3 plays later scored a touchdown, right?
Right.
It was like they got the ball at Ole Miss's 35. So really that game was a little closer than what they thought. However, that's a big number. Arkansas is plus the 6. Arkansas's got to run the football. KJ Jefferson, he's got to be more involved. Matt Corral, you got to get him back on track. But again, both of these teams are running football teams. It's going to be about who's able to run the football better and who plays better defense. Their defenses are about the same. I think I looked up the stat. They're almost mirror images of each other, both defensively and offensively.
Rushing yards allowed 153 for Arkansas, 151 for...
Yes.
Their differences is their passing game, which is literally their quarterback.
Yeah,
it's Matt Corral. That's the difference between the offenses.
And it's deep passes for Ole Miss and kind of timely shots
outside
for all that. So they're both coming off terrible losses. Who runs the ball better? That's the key to the game. I'm going to go with Lane Kiffin and Matt Corral just because I trust them more. KJ Jefferson, that offense never got going. Now it's going to get going a little bit against Ole Miss here, but Ole Miss never really got... They still put up 21 points on Alabama, which is a big achievement if there is any silver lining in a 21-point loss.
Right.
But I'm going to trust... Vegas has them as the favorite as well, so I'm going to trust Ole Miss. I'm going to trust Vegas. I'm going to take Ole Miss. You can either take them outright, but if you don't like those odds, I would take them -6 because I think that this is a touchdown game anyway.
I think so too. I'm going to take Ole Miss too. I don't like it. I'd rather Arkansas. You know, I would have rathered Arkansas win last week too, but it just wasn't going to happen. So taking Ole Miss, I think Matt Corral is going to be the difference. Watch first quarter. You'll know who will win this game after the first quarter. If Ole Miss comes out and they find their rhythm, Ole Miss is going to win. If they don't, if somehow Arkansas's offense takes out the quarterback, watch out, Arkansas is going to come. It's going to be one of those games.
So this is not looking good for us because so far we have picked all the favorites.
I mean, this week is such an anomaly in college football. It really is like, what was it, 2007 is what we were hoping this year was going to be?
This year is every 7 years it kind of shapes up to be that way. 2014 was kind of weird. I know I sent you something there.
Yeah.
However, that trend of me taking all the favorites minus the points stops with the Red River rivalry. Number 6 Oklahoma at the Cotton Bowl against number 21 Texas. Texas, since that Arkansas loss where they really didn't know who they were offensively, has since picked it up offensively. Now, their defense is allowing loads ton, but their offense is now clicking. They got a Heisman candidate, Texas does themselves, in Bijan Robinson, their running back. He ran the ball 35 times last week for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, 200 yards and change. Their defense allows basically 400 yards a game. So Oklahoma, whatever offensive struggles they were having, they no longer have this week. Can Texas run the ball against Oklahoma's defense, which is allowing 83 rushing yards per game? However, Oklahoma is still not running the ball. So again, does that get solved against the Texas defense? Who knows? Spencer Rattler, can he get back on course? He really hasn't looked hot, as we said. But Mr. Casey Thompson, the quarterback for the Longhorns, is a lot like Cade McNamara, but better. It's basically whenever he's in charge of the Texas offense, good things happen. So he will get the start again this week. He's probably started going forward. Look for Texas to run and run often. Oklahoma, can they hold up against the run? Can they start running the football? Because everyone knows that Spencer Rattler ain't going to get it done. And more importantly, can that offensive line block on passing down against Texas? Oklahoma are 3.5-point favorites. The over-under 63.5. I actually think, I'm not a huge fan of large over numbers, but you hammer that over number. And also, you take Texas. Either to win outright or you take them plus the 3.5. It really doesn't matter to me, whatever your better odds are. I'm taking Texas outright. Something just screams that Oklahoma's been playing with fire the last couple of weeks. Nebraska, they should have lost. West Virginia, they probably should have lost. Last week against Kansas State, they had the game in control, and then it finished like a 7-point game. Oklahoma's just kind of playing with fire. Texas has already experienced that loss, has already played with the fire, and now is kind of, you sometimes have to lose to kind of find yourself and find your team. I think Texas is kind of finding themselves, finding their team, finding their identity. So I like Texas here in the upset, and that would put Texas in the driver's seat to win the Big 12. And let's not be, if Texas is offense, Texas might have an offense that could compete with Georgia and Alabama's defensively anyway. But that's just my pick.
We've also done something of picked pretty similarly. I think neither of us have not picked against each other so far this week.
Right.
So, and it's not going to stop now. I'm picking Texas too. All Texas has to do is take out Spencer Rattler, which so far has been too easy for teams to do. For lesser teams to do is take care of Spencer Rattler. And Texas, they can play. They can play defense. I don't think it's taking care of Spencer Rattler. I think it's taking care of that running game.
Well,
they don't have the running game yet. So I'm looking.
Right, but all I'm saying is a Texas squad that gives up almost 200 yards on the ground to teams. If you let Oklahoma run for 200 yards, you're gonna have a bad time because Spencer Rattler's gonna throw the ball over your head.
Right. You basically what I'm saying is you have to put this ball in Spencer Rattler's hands.
Yeah.
You have to make him make bad decisions. He's looking super young right now. He's looking super bad right now, which is bad for him, for what he wants to do. Bad for Lincoln Riley, for what his brand has been so far, is QBU. But if you can get the ball in Spencer Rattler's hands, you want to take in this game. This is a game you're taking the kickoff, you're receiving it first thing, you're marching down the field, and you're scoring a touchdown in a heated debate, and you're making Oklahoma chase you. Do not chase Oklahoma if you're Texas. That is going to
what that's actually that might be the smartest thing you've said on the podcast to date. That's. So if you win the coin toss, you wouldn't defer. You'd take the ball right away.
I'd take the ball right away, and I would show them what I came to do.
That is a decent point, and it's hard for me to disagree with that because, again, Oklahoma has not shown that they can do it consistently on offense this year. So yeah, I mean, all I'm saying, I don't hate that take. Not at all. Yeah, that's not all that sizzling. Before we kind of wrap up the show here with what am I watching and then my lock of the week, as Simeon already gave his, but mine is a very tasty lock of the week. I want to get into my top 10.
Nice.
How my top 10 differs from the AP top 10. So the AP top 10 is as follows: Alabama, Georgia, Iowa, Penn State, Cincinnati, Oklahoma, Oregon, Michigan, BYU. Couple things with this top 10. The top, it's more the bottom. And again, it's hard because 4 top 10 teams lost last week, and then you also have a couple teams right outside the top 10 that lost as well. Michigan is not the 9th best team in the nation.
No.
I'm sorry. I love Big Blue. And let's just fast forward. That is what I'm watching this weekend, the Michigan-Nebraska game. No one is surprised by this who listens to this podcast. Nebraska is going to give them a real fight. Nebraska averages about 500 yards of offense. Michigan's going to have to throw the ball around a little bit and kind of try to find their running game. But I'm not going to break that down. Michigan is not the 9th best team in the country. BYU is definitely better than Michigan. BYU might be better than Oklahoma. BYU sneakily, probably again, should have one loss to Arizona State, but sneakily is kind of creeping up and making
BYU doesn't have
some,
any losses. They're undefeated.
Right. I know. No, what I'm saying is they should have a loss to Arizona State.
I see.
Right, because they got dominated.
I remember that game. That was the game that I lost by half a point.
Right.
Yeah.
So BYU, I think they have some big games at their on the back end of their schedule, if I'm not mistaken, which they might have a legitimate shot as the season winds down to be one of those 4 best teams. But BYU sneakily is showing that they weren't just last one-hit wonder when they played basically trash teams all year because of COVID, as I thought that they were.
They have Boise this week, Baylor next week.
Big game. Solid game.
Yeah. UVA and USC the last week.
Okay, so they got quality opponents, basically. The Virginia game is interesting. Baylor, though, next week
BYU does not travel well.
Is going to be their biggest game. So anyway, all I'm saying is just pay a little bit of attention to BYU. Now watch BYU go lay a giant egg this week. Anyway, let's get to my top 10. That's what everyone's here for, because my opinion is the opinion that you all care about. This is my top 10 here. So Georgia's at number 1 to me.
Lies.
They have earned the spot for the top team. Their defense is incredible. They still got to find who they are kind of at quarterback, but other than that, they're great. Alabama, it's nothing against Alabama. It's just more of what I've seen from Georgia yet this year. I would have Penn State over Iowa. It's just to me, Penn State played Auburn, and Iowa really hasn't played anyone all that great. Then I would have Iowa, so I would just flop those 2. I would have Cincy still at 5. Fine, you've earned it. You can sit right outside the top 4, and if you go undefeated, and if you look good doing it, fine, you can get in, because at some point, 3 and 4 are going to play each other, and 1 and 2, if they keep winning out, are going to play each other. So there's chances for Cincinnati to get in. Ohio State, I have at 6. There's nothing wrong with their offense. You can say what you want. Wait, I think in the AP top 10, I missed Ohio State.
No, Ohio State is 7. You skipped Oklahoma at 6.
I did. Okay, so it's Ohio State. So it's Oklahoma, Ohio State.
Yeah.
Oregon, Michigan. Okay, well, that's better. Anyway, so I have Ohio State at 6, which is just one up. I have BYU at 7, again, for the reasons I talked about. Michigan State has looked impressive. Their closest loss was to Nebraska. Nebraska is a very good team. They're going to give Michigan a handful. It's in Lincoln. They're more than likely going to beat Michigan. And Michigan and Michigan State play each other next week. I then have, again, Michigan State at 8, Oklahoma State at 9. They play real defense, and they have found ways to win, and I respect that for them. They're sitting there at 12, so it's not that big of a leap. My big leap is at number 10. It's Coastal Carolina. What else do you want from a top 10 team? They're playing nobody, and they're blowing out everyone they play. They're beating everyone by 40-plus points. They are outstanding. They're sitting, I think, at 16 or 17 right now.
15 right now. They're basically moving up one spot every week.
And I just think that they have shown more than kind of these other teams. Yes, the level of competition, but they're just raking the level of competition they're playing. So why not reward them? So I have Coastal Carolina at number 10. Now, again, they're the most expendable one on the list because of the level of competition, but I think it should be rewarded for what they are doing with that level of competition.
They're putting up 530 yards a game.
There's nothing
and putting
wrong
an
with
average of 48 points against somebody. Here's Coastal Carolina's problem. We don't differ too much. I want to go over mine because this was interesting when I said that we were going to do. When you said we were going to do this, Coastal Carolina really needed to play. Really, really badly needed to play Louisiana again this year. I mean, they'll get them again in the championship game, but basically, after Kansas, after Buffalo, which they only beat by 3 points, they played UMass, University of Louisiana Monroe. They're playing Arkansas State this week, and they're playing App State next week. And App State's the only hard game really they have left on their schedule besides their standard, in-conference games. So it's just one of those things where I think 15's fair. I think I'd put them closer to like 13. If I'm going to give you my top, I'm trying to switch back here. Georgia, Alabama, Penn State, Iowa. I'll give Cincinnati at 5. I'll be nice and put Oklahoma at 6. Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, drop them out and basically move 10, 11, and 12 up into their spots.
Who?
So put BYU at 7, put Michigan State at 8, and put Oklahoma State at
9.
and then
who's 10?
I don't care. Put Kentucky at 10 for all I put Ohio State just because Oregon lost. But I still don't. I think Iowa State's like a 12th ranked team right now. I think Oregon's like a 13 or 15.
I just don't understand why you think Ohio State's so bad. Their defense, yes, is questionable. However, what they did against Rutgers was, Michigan's defense did the exact same thing. They let up the same point. There's nothing wrong with their offense. They have the 3 best receivers in college football.
Let me tell you exactly why. Okay. Georgia is allowing 4 points a game. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Makes sense. Alabama lost 2 Heisman finalists and basically their entire offense and filled the position somehow. Bryce Young looked very good.
Congratulations. You listened to the last week's episode. Continue.
I didn't, but that's okay.
It was sarcasm, but continue.
Ohio State lost to Oregon. Top teams, top 5 teams don't lose to Oregon. I'm sorry. That's how I'm viewing them right now. And until they they beat Michigan State, until they beat Penn State, until they beat Michigan, you're sitting at 12 for me.
But they're not even a top 10 team to you?
No.
With that,
Listen, there's too many teams that are still undefeated. We're at week 5. Get this one-loss get this one-loss shit out of here.
Well,
put in Kentucky, put in Coastal Carolina, put in SMU. Wake Forest is good for the first time in like a century. They're 5-0, and they deserve that 5-0.
Wake Forest is actually might be the best team in the ACC, which is kind of
ridiculous. Their mascot is a car, ladies and gentlemen.
The Demon Deacons?
Yes, their mascot. They're the Demon Deacons, but you know how like Oklahoma comes out and like Colorado comes, like they all have a thing. Yeah. They drive out this old like Buick or Ford or something, and that's technically their mascot.
Oh.
So
I thought it was a guy with a giant top hat who looks like one of the
Demon Deacon.
Yeah.
It's one. He's their other mascot.
Okay.
So, anyway,
Well, your hatred for Ohio State will not go unnoticed.
You're just, I'm not saying they should be unranked. I think after last week, I will take that back. Now, granted, that title got us a lot of views, so I don't take it back that much. But at the same time, they're only like 12. There's too many still unbeaten teams that needs to be in top 10.
If you put Ohio State and Coastal Carolina on the field...
Ohio State's blowing them out.
Right, and if you put Ohio
State... But what's
going
to be a fun game as we watch Coastal Carolina... If you put it in Myrtle Beach, maybe. Maybe.
No, I don't think so.
Maybe.
But anyway, let's get to my lock of the week, my very tasty lock of the week. You ready? You're going to love this. I actually picked this...
No one cares!
I picked this game, my lock of the week, with you in mind. You ready for this?
I am.
It is the battle. I am titling this game myself. It is called The Battle for Last.
Okay.
It is unwinningness. Winless UConn.
Oh, this should be good.
Taking on winless UMass.
Oh my gosh.
The UConn Huskies are 0-5.
The Trailer Park Fire Tornado Hurricane
are going to the University of Massachusetts Minutemen. And it is incredible. So it's basically, I have zero idea which team, how these two teams are, besides that they both suck. Here, all I know is UConn's getting 3 points, so it's, UMass is the underdogs.
They're getting 3. This game's that close?
Yes, it is that close. The over-under 2 is like 58 or something like that. It's pretty ridiculous. But here's the thing.
What time's this game on? Please tell me this game's televised.
It is not. It is not. You can't even watch it on ESPN Plus, but it's on at 3 o'clock, and I'm sure someone will have highlights or something. I picked this game solely on this fact. Who got blown out less? And the answer is UConn. UMass has lost... is just terrible. Both of these defenses are giving up around 500 yards of total offense a game. Their offenses themselves are not very good, so this, I don't know whether or not it'll be a barn burner or what. Anyway, my lock of the week is UConn to win out.
He's taking them.
Yes. UConn finally gets off the schneid and wins the battle for last, placing UMass in the sole possession of the basement in the FBS.
Okay, here's the interesting thing, right? Okay, I'm just looking over this. So yeah, 3.5, 55.5 points is the over/under. You just picked an underdog, by the way. According to the FBI, that's UMass is the favorite here.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm still taking UConn.
So I want to walk you through here. Okay,
UConn.
Since September 4th, the beginning of the season, UMass has lost to Pitt, Boston College, Eastern Michigan, who's not too hot this year, Coastal Carolina, and the always blazing Toledo. By the way, which they lost 45-7. Are you guys getting like middle schoolers to play for you?
They might be.
Okay, this is my favorite fact, okay? I thought Army might actually do good this year until they lost last week because of this fact. Holy Cross, which is an FCS team, they lost by 10. They put up this is UConn. They put up a fat goose egg against Purdue. They lost to Army by 31 points. They lost to Wyoming by 2 points, and they lost to Vanderbilt, ladies and gentlemen, by 2 points.
Hey, Vanderbilt.
I think UConn's a good pick. I'm not going to lie. Total yardage is literally 0.2 from an average perspective, difference between these two teams.
Yeah.
I think you picked a good team here.
Thank you.
Only from a stats perspective. If it was for anything else, like, these are two teams that should not have football programs, in my opinion.
No. 100%. But I'm here for it, and I knew that you would like this lock of the week because it is just they're two terrible teams.
Yep.
And they're going to play each other, and so we're going to find out who's the terriblest of all the terriblest. We're going to find out who's the worstest of all the worstest. All we know is we're the worstest podcast on the interwebs.
It's going to be our mascot. Whoever loses this game will be our mascot
100%.
For the rest of the year. So
we're going to have a great weekend, ladies and gentlemen. So just to kind of recap here real quick, we're taking Texas. We're taking Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
We're taking Georgia minus the points.
Yep.
And I say we because we agreed on everything.
Yep.
Iowa, and we're taking Arizona State minus the point. And then the lock of the week. You want to jump on the lock of the week as well?
Yeah, I'll take your lock of the week,
All
actually.
right. And then the lock of the week is UConn
over
UMass.
What was my lock of the week? I should have written it down.
Your lock of the week was Penn State. Was it Penn State and Iowa minus?
Was there
under 40?
Under 40, and I think I took the over.
Do you want to change the lock of the week, or are you good with that?
No, I'll do both.
No, you said take the under on that.
Oh, that's right.
Your mind.
No. We're still confident in that under.
Okay,
I'll be wrong because I might have COVID, but it is what it is.
Great. So take the under for Simeon's lock of the week. I would say take the over. I think that this is a 24-21 type of game. Anyway, as always, that brings us to the end of the show. Wash your hands, you filthy animals. Thank you so much for tuning in. Anchor.fm/4th and 1. We are also on YouTube, 4th and 1 podcast. From Lititz, Pennsylvania, God bless. Peace out. Be kind to one another.